Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, MVP Days fans. Welcome to another edition of MVP Days Online 2020. It's my esteemed pleasure to be here with you. And my name is Dave Kawula. I'm Microsoft MVP. And you can follow me at Twitter at Dave Kawula. I'm one of the co-founders of MVP Days along with Crystal. And today we're going to be talking about building a guarded fabric for Azure Stack HCI Storage Spaces Direct with PowerShell. We'll also talk a little bit about securing the platform as it's built. And one of the things to understand is that the guarded fabric concept is so important when we look at building hyper-converged infrastructure, because protecting our most critical assets, our host server infrastructure, where we're going to be taking and running all of our virtual machines and our workloads, has become a huge attack surface for threat actors here in 2020, especially with COVID-19. And today, I hope you enjoy the session. I'm going to show you some of my tricks that I use to standing up the guarded fabric. Most of the session today is going to be demos. I've got a few slides just so that we can take and have something to follow along with, but most of what I'll show you some demos. And as always, all of my scripts are available on my GitHub repository. If you just go to github.com/dkawula, you will be able to grab them, and I'll show you the link for that as we go through the presentation here. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about today is don't wait until you're under attack to start thinking about building a secured fabric environment. And one of the reasons that you want to have a secured guarded fabric environment with separate credentials and a different Active Directory forest and domain is if your primary domain happens to get compromised and somebody gets your domain admin credentials, and it can happen. I've been in 2 ransomware / hacking incidents this year where it has happened, where the threat actors have escalated and elevated their credentials up to admin access, full domain admin access actually. You have to think that now they've got access to your Hyper-V host servers, they've got access to your storage spaces direct clusters, they've got access to your backup infrastructure, they've got access to potentially, your cloud infrastructure they have. And from what we've seen in the field is the threat actors will actually hang out in the environment for an extended period of time, waiting to execute the attack at a point where they're confident that they can trash any way that you have of restoring it, thus increasing their opportunity of potentially making money off of you. So like I said, don't leave this until you've had an attack. And this script actually came about from a scenario where we did have an attack at a customer and they hadn't had a chance to build up their guarded fabric, and we needed a fast way to stand it up. So I'll show you what some of my PowerShell scripts look like for building both the base gold images as well as the couple domain controllers and management servers you'll need. You should actually be able to get everything up and running in probably less than an hour's time in your lab environment. It's very easy to do. And it's scripts that I've used for a long time. As always, use the scripts at your own discretion. These are just, my working scripts that I use to automate things. So I like to script things because I get asked to do things more than once, and I don't like to have to continually click through a GUI over and over again. For your guarded fabric environment, you're going to want to have at least 2 domain controllers and a management server, WSUS server as an optional piece. You can actually build it out as big as you want, and you could actually use this for a simulated lab environment. But what I've done is I've converted my big demo code that I had that I've used for years, and I've actually turned it into a production fabric builder script. So getting right to it, you want to build you want to have an expedited build of a guarded fabric. Step 1 is you're going to need to build yourself a base gold image for Server 2019. To build this base gold image, how I like to do it is I use a utility from Microsoft called Convert Windows Image, and I've got some wrappers that are built around that with my base image builder script. So let's go ahead and let's get started right there. So let's jump into the demo environment here. Alright, so we're in the demo environment now, and inside of the demo environment, like I said, you can grab the scripts that I'm using from my GitHub repository. It's just github.com/dkawula. It's in the operations repository, and if you click on Hyper-V, you will find this script base image builder v4. Go ahead and download this. I've already got this downloaded to my system. Let me just show you what the working folder looks like that we're going to be in here. I've created a folder called Fabric Temp on my D drive. Inside of my Fabric Temp folder here, I've only taken and placed a couple things. Let me just clean this up a little bit here for you because I've already run this script once. Let me just go ahead and delete all of this stuff because this is what you're going to start with. Step number 1 is you need to go ahead and download yourself a copy of the Server 2019 ISO. I've got the ISO that's been pre-updated with all of this up to September 2020 CUs. If you're working on this in production, always make sure you grab the latest version of this. It cuts down the patching time that you have when you go live. This just happened to be the version that I had downloaded in my lab environment here. As you can see, I've downloaded Base Image Builder v4, and with that, let's go ahead and let's kick this off. So what you're going to want to do is open up an administrative PowerShell prompt. Browse to the directory, so I just browsed over to D drive Fabric Temp. These are the parameters that you're going to take and execute, so we're just going to take and run Base Image Builder v4. I'll just define a working directory. Always make sure that you put quotations around any of the inputs that you have inside of here, so we're just going to say the working directory is going to be called D drive Fabric Temp. The organization is going to be called MVPDays. The owner is going to be Dave Kawula. Time zone, admin password. This is the local administrator password. Obviously, you're going to want to change this once you get going in production. That's just a password that I put in for now. And then you have a couple different options in here. So right now, you can actually use this script to build 2016 gold images as well. So if I take and I show you here, you see how I can do 2019 GUI, 2019 Core, I can do 2016 GUI, 2016 Core, and if you want, there's an optional spot in here where you can put the Windows key. The Windows key actually isn't required for the 2019 GUI, it'll just go into evaluation mode, so you will have to finish the activation process and put in your product key post, and that is fine. And so we just want to run that with verbose. Now the system that I'm running on does have a fairly fast SSD drive inside of it. We've got to get ready to build this. So it actually only takes a couple minutes to build this out, and I'll show you how this process happens. So we'll go ahead and we'll kick this off. First thing that's going to happen is I've got a dialog prompt that pops up with my code asking me for the 2019 ISO image. So I can go ahead and browse to Fabric Temp. I can go grab that image file. If you're doing 2016, it would simply just prompt you for 2016 as well. And that's it. Basically, click OK. And if I go under Base VHDs here, under Base VHDs, we can see the creation of the Gold VHDX file starting here. And it's basically formatting this volume out right now, and then what it's going to do is it's going to start streaming in that ISO as a gold image. So instead of you having to build a Hyper-V virtual machine, next, finish through the install, I've got an unattended answer file that's actually built in as part of this process that will bring this into running ready states. It's about 8 and a bit gigs once this is finished. And if we want to see the speed that things are running at, we can just open up Resource Monitor. We can take a look at what's going on here. I can see the creation of the Gold VHDX file. And if I scroll over, we can kind of see the speed that that's running at overall. And so we can see we've streamed in approximately 2.7 gigs already. Like I said, this will complete at about 9 gigs. So we're going to go ahead and stick with you. We're not going to pause the video. I like doing these things real time and live. So we'll just go ahead and minimize Resource Monitor. And while this is actually finishing up, what we'll do is we'll just let the system finish, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually spin up a Hyper-V virtual machine that's based off of this Gold VHD template, And then I will kind of explain a little bit about our next steps that we're going to go through, which is actually building the fabric from this base gold VHDX. Now the cool part about this is that this process using the base image builder is great for building up any of your environments. It could be dev, test, lab environments. You might just be wanting to have some fast ways of, doing some testing. And that's why I like the base image builder. I know that there's other solutions out there. I know I've got other friends that have their own solutions and their own ways of doing things. This is my session, so I will show off the way that I like to do things in production. I like the code because it's something that I've had a chance to go through and do some authoring on. So here we go. Just go ahead and close this down. Almost there. So it's going to finish up here in just a second. There is a little bit of a bug at the end of the script where it goes to dismount the image. Don't worry about that. Everything still works fine. So we'll see a little bit of red here. I haven't had a chance to clean that up. And we can see we have a image. Great. And so if we click over here, the process is done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to copy the gold VHDX file. We're going to take and we're going to create a new folder here. And we're just going to call this Fabric Temp VM. And we're going to go ahead and copy this over here. And while that's copying over, let's go ahead and spin up a Hyper-V virtual machine, because this is very important that you understand how this works. So I'll just say a new VM, and I called that Fabric Temp VM. And we'll go ahead and we'll store that in D drive Fabric Temp. We'll make it a Generation 2 virtual machine. Give it 4 gigs of RAM. Configure networking. I've already got a Hyper-V virtual switch defined. We're going to use an existing disk, so we're going to attach to that existing gold VHDX file. So we'll go to the D drive, Fabric Temp, grab that file. You could rename that. Doesn't really matter what we do because it's just test right now. Let's go ahead and let's turn this thing on. I am building this on Windows 10, so you can see how kind of the automatic checkpoints are running there for my Windows 10 build. It's going to go ahead and start spinning up the virtual machine. Now, the important part about building your fabric now is that, okay, so now I've got a gold VHDX template for Server 2019. This thing is ready to go. But what are some of the resources that we want to take and build under the covers? Well, we're probably going to want to have a domain controller. We're probably going to want to automate the build of that Active Directory domain controller first and such. And so my next script that I'll show you once we can actually log into this particular virtual machine to kind of prove that it's working and ready is I've got a way to automate the build, and including with a custom domain name, your Active Directory force and domain that you can use for your fabric. We'll also build out a management server, and inside of that management server, some of my PowerShell code will go as far as to pre-installing Windows Admin Center in there for you. So now we've got a management plane so that we can get in out of band on here. You'll notice how I'm building this in Server 2019 GUI. Could most definitely be built in Server 2019 Core Edition. And this is a great way to kind of get started as we go through this process. So right now we're about 13 minutes or so into the session, and I've almost got my first VM up and running, 13 minutes. So that's my gold virtual machine that we've got. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to take and try to log in here. So let's go ahead and just copy that default password that we had set in there. And we'll make sure we can log in. So that's it. That's it for this test. So I've got a virtual machine that's available for me, Gold VHDX, ready to go. No roles, vanilla, just ready to go for the lab. We can do basically anything we want with this Gold VHDX. So now our next step that we have is to kind of prime the live environment. And to do that, we're going to take a look at our next script. So let me just do a little bit of cleanup here. Let's go ahead and turn off this little test virtual machine that we're working with. Let's go ahead and delete this. And let's go ahead and take a look at the folder working structure that we've got. So if we take a look at Fabric Temp, there's a folder in here called Base VHDs. This is where the gold VHDX file is there. What I've already done for this video is I've copied this gold VHDX file over to a folder called Fabric. Under folder called Fabric, you'll see there's no virtual machines in here yet. I've got some working scripts in here. This is just a little bit of the work that I've been doing. But we're going to use an install script called the Prod Fabric Builder. And so Prod Fabric Builder is also something that you'll be able to find on my GitHub repository. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump back to the PowerPoint. See that I've already got this copied in here. I've got the base and core already created. And so that's the point that we're at right now. So let's go back to the presentation here. We've got the base image built. Now the next thing that we want to do is expedite our build of the management and domain controllers for this environment. Now to do this, I've actually converted my big demo script that you'll see if you follow me. You'll see that I've used that in most of the books that I've written and things like that. I've converted it to Prod Fabric Builder. Where you're going to find this source building information, you're going to go back to my GitHub repository. I've got an operations repo and a sub repo underneath there called Titan Fabric. And what you're going to want to do is go ahead and grab yourself a copy of Prod Fabric Builder 2.0. Prod Fabric Builder 2.0 is ready to go. I've used it several environments right now, and it works really well. So the gist of this is that we can basically choose some virtual machines that we want to run here. For example, I want to take and I want to build some domain controllers. I want to build a management server. I want to build a WSUS server. And then I want to take and I want to build things out. And like I said, I've got a few things like installing the Windows Admin Center. We'll go ahead and automatically download that and run that. Okay, so let's just go ahead and grab this latest version of the Prod Fabric Builder here. Okay, so to grab the latest version of this, what we're going to do is we're just going to go into my GitHub repository here. We're going to go ahead and click on Raw, and we're going to copy this. We'll go ahead and bring this over into PowerShell ISE, and I'll paste that in, and we'll save this off. And we're going to go ahead and save this as my Prod Fabric Builder 2.0. I've already got one in there that's a kind of a temp working one, so for argument's sake here, we're just going to call this 2.1. Save. Let's go back to PowerShell. Now in PowerShell, we can simply just change the folder path. So let's actually clear this out. Alright, so cd/fabric. And we want to run Prod Fabric Builder 2.1, which is the latest one that I've just downloaded. Working directory is going to be D drive fabric. Organization name is going to be MVPDays, Kawula, Mountain Standard Time. Password here is going to be the same password that we specified earlier for our gold image. Domain name. Now this is where you can actually choose a custom domain name. So to make this fun, I'm just going to call this dave.com. Domain admin password, we'll say hypothetically speaking, we're going to call that exactly the same. Virtual switch name, this would be something that we've got set up in Hyper-V, so I already know that this is VSW02. As part of the source code for this, you can change the IP ranges that you're running. So for my lab, I'm on a 10.10 network with /16. So I'm just going to go 10.10.255. And then the domain controller will be, the first domain controller will be 255.1 and 255.2 and 3. I've got that hard coded as part of the script. Extra lab file sources actually doesn't really do much right now. So we'll go ahead and we'll run this. And first thing is you notice how it's actually prompting me here for the Veeam 9.5 ISO, because I was playing around with automatically deploying Veeam inside of here. So what we can do is I can simply choose that. It's not going to use it for anything because I've commented it out. And so now what this script is doing is it's actually copying the gold VHDX template, because we don't want to create differencing disks because this is for production. And we can take and just see what that is going to look like for us here. So if I go to Fabric, I can choose my VHDs. All right, so that's finished copying the first one over here. And we can see that it's now working on the second one, and it's already started up that first virtual machine for us. So if we go ahead and we open up Hyper-V, we can see that I've got a domain controller that is primed here. Now, obviously nothing's happened yet. That's just the name of the Hyper-V virtual machine. But if I fire this up, it's the same exact experience that you saw when I built the virtual machine from scratch. This just automates the process for you. So if you're a consultant that's out there and you need to build these up for your clients, you can easily customize this code to build out any type of base environment. It's very, very flexible to build this into pretty much anything that you're looking for. Okay, so it takes a minute for this to actually prime up, like you saw with the gold VHDX standard Hyper-V build that I showed you. So now it's creating the fourth one here. It's just copying the WSUS VM here for us, and we can kind of see the progress as to what's going on inside of here by the creation of these VHDX files. So now what will end up happening is we use PowerShell Direct, and we want to wait for the administrator to be able to log in, and this is going to start the build of the fabric. And so in order for that to happen, this has to be finished and basically at a logon prompt. So as soon as this hits to a logon prompt, then we will be able to take and proceed. And this is actually one of the important pieces, is that my script and the base image builder kind of go hand in hand, because the default admin password is actually required, because we're going to take and we're going to have to call on whatever that was built out of the base image builder. So if you have changed that local admin password, then you'll have to adjust your script accordingly inside of here. The whole process for building the domain controllers and the management server and getting the base environment kind of prepped and ready to go takes approximately 20 plus minutes. So right now we're about 22 minutes or so into the video, and this is going to kick off here in just a minute once this thing is finished and ready to go. And that's where we will take and we will come back. So here we go. You can see that I'm setting the IP address to 10.10.255.1. We're going to go through some other worker functions inside of here. And I'm pushing all of these configurations in remotely via PowerShell. So for those of you that are watching this particular session here today, one of the things that I want you to understand is that learning PowerShell remoting, learning remote configs is so important for us as administrators. You can see that I've had 0 logons into this domain controller. I haven't touched it. I'm just showing you this as to what's happening kind of behind the scenes. It's the art of the possible. So inside of my prod fabric builder script, I've got many, many different worker functions that are inside of there that I use for building a variety of environments. And you can think of this as a great way to learn how to start with PowerShell remoting. And so now what we're going to do is go ahead and configure a default gateway on this thing. We're going to go ahead and make sure that it has some connectivity. And now look at what we're doing. We're actually installing Active Directory. Like I said, I know that I've got some friends that are out there that have some great solutions, like Yarmir and his WS Lab solution that's out there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using those other solutions. I like this one because I've had the chance to spend about 2,000–3,000 hours learning PowerShell, building environments, and this is where I really cut my teeth on kind of learning how to do a lot of these things with PowerShell. And so I like the script because when you've authored something, then it's a lot easier to take and to go through and troubleshoot if something's going wrong. And plus, when the cards are down and you've got to take and go ahead and build something out, this is a lot easier for me to just use the script. So I hope everyone really enjoys the script. You have a chance to use it. I've shown you where to find it. And so with that, I think we'll jump back over to our PowerPoint, and then we'll come back to the environment afterwards, after I show you a little bit more. This is going to reboot a few more times. I'll kind of scroll through the script here to show you what has been built out in behind the scenes. But I got a couple more things that I want to talk to you first. So the environment build is in flight. We're not even 25 minutes into this. And maybe even by the time we're done in the next 2 to 3 minutes of PowerPoints, we might actually have a domain controller that we can log into here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's minimize this. All right. So the next thing that you have to look at is that this is a vanilla environment. This is a next finished, even although I've scripted build with PowerShell. There's nothing special in there. There's no custom group policies. There's nothing locked down. This is as vanilla as you can get it. So a lot of customers ask me and say, well, listen, we have no idea where to get started with locking down our environments, and there's a lot of exploits that are out there. What's a good place to start? So one of the recommendations that I have is that you want to look at the Security Compliance Toolkit as a good baseline. It has some pre-canned group policy objects that you can import into that Fabric environment. I have tested it against Storage Spaces direct clusters, and it does work with some minor amounts of tweaking. And it's a great place to get started. So make sure you don't just go with the basic build. You do want to lock down that Fabric. I've given the download link here for you to take a look at the Security Compliance Toolkit. All right. The next one is locking down what it is that we can actually get access to once we're inside of the Fabric. Please, please, please don't use RDP as your management points to gain access to your resources anymore. RDP is a well-known way of jumping through an environment. There's been so many exploits that have come out in 2020. You want to really limit what you're going to be having that you can gain access. So one of the ways to do that is you could build yourself a privileged access workstation. You could remove domain admins from the general administrators groups on all of those servers. You could really control who can access what, and how much lateral movement you're going to have inside of the environment. If you are using Storage Spaces Direct, you can lock down Storage Spaces Direct clusters and Hyper-V host servers by using just enough administration and role-based access control that comes via Windows Admin Center. All of the GIA configurations are included in there. In fact, myself and fellow MVP John O'Neill Sr. went ahead and documented all this, and we ran a good workshop at Tech Mentor back in 2019. And so our lab book is there and available for you if you want to dig into that further, so you can get a better understanding of GIA PowerShell role-based access control, specifically for Windows Admin Center. So there's some good stuff there for you. And then the last one here is multi-factor authentication for your environment. First of all, if you do have to RDP across your environment, make sure that you've got multi-factor authentication set up. Have an app set up so that you have a dual authenticator. I'm a big fan of Cisco Duo, very easy to set up. It's actually free for 10 administrators if you weren't aware of that. And you actually do need a limited amount of administrators for a Fabric. So you could actually have a free solution that you could use to lock things down. All right, so we're coming up on 30 minutes here. Let's go back to the demo environment. Let's see how things are progressing. It looks like we're into a reboot of our domain controller. So what I'm going to do is just pause the video here shortly, and what I'll do is I'll come back as soon as I can log in, and we'll just check back in on the timing to see how long this actually took. Okay, that had finished rebooting there, and it took a few minutes for it to complete the next step, about 5 minutes there. And now what we're doing is we're installing Active Directory certificate services, and so I want to have a bit of a PKI infrastructure set up in here so we can see the installation starting for this. There'll be a couple more reboots of the domain controller, but I think it'd be fun to actually see if we actually have our Dave.com. Oh, look at that. Sign in to Dave. There's our custom domain name. Let's see if we can actually log into this guy. So let's give this a shot. And we'll go ahead and paste our password. It looks like that worked for us. Little bit of a test here is we could try opening up Active Directory users and computers. And at the end of this, we'll have 2 domain controllers, a management server with Windows Admin Center, all nicely built out. I'm starting to run a little bit overtime on the session, so I've got to really cut this short. So let me just go ahead and show you that I can get into Active Directory here. And there you go. I've got a Dave.com, fresh Active Directory, all built up for you in less than 30 minutes. Folks, I really hope that you enjoy this session. It was my distinguished pleasure to bring this to you. Enjoy the rest of our MVP Days 2020 show. On behalf of Crystal, myself, and the rest of the crew at MVP Days, always appreciate your support. Thanks again, and we hope to see you at the next set of shows coming up.